The proposal is, you have a link to it. Probably in the workshop notes. Hang on. So I'm just trying to find it.
I just sent it on the chat if you want.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so do we have any of the authors of this proposal who want to just summarize what it's about?
So should I start the presentation by sharing the slide, or do you want me to like summarize the whole context briefly?
You can, whichever is more convenient for you.
Okay, I think it's better to just do the presentation first, and we can discuss on the topic by summarizing the topics, I think.
Okay, sounds good to me.
So I'll share the slide now. Can everybody see what I'm looking at?
Yes, we can see that.
Okay, so I will start the presentation then. Okay, so today I'm going to present to you the CommitImprove Zero Knowledge and its extensions. I'm pretty sure everybody here, most of the audience, are already quite familiar with the term CommitImprove, because the CommitImprove proposal is like a multiple one. It has been started since the very first ZKProof Workshop, and it has been developed over and over again. And last year, the working group, the CommitImprove working group, has been actually merged with the Saber working group to include the Saber as an Encrypted Improve extension to be plugged into the CommitImprove framework. So today I'm going to present to you that what CommitImprove is about, repeating it, and also what the extension, the Encrypted Improve, is about. And then maybe I can introduce some discussion topics that we would like to discuss for today, and then make some progress on the standard in the future. Okay, so let us begin with repeating what the intuition of the CommitImprove is, just for the newcomers who are not really familiar with the terminology. Okay, so I assume everybody knows what zero knowledge is. It's about trusting properties that is claimed by someone else on the data that you have not seen. So verifier is going to be convinced that the data U holds for some certain relation R, but without looking at the actual data U. Compared to this, the CommitImprove zero knowledge means that almost the same thing, but there's one more thing, that the data can be actually pointed to some reference, which is a commitment. So this commitment is going to be open to the original data U. Then where can we use this concept? Let's think about the usability. So first one would be compressing or fingerprinting of the data. Let's say, for example, there's a verifiable computation and we are delegating some storage and also the computation to the untrusted server. Then the verifier is going to keep the fingerprint of the data for its own. And what the untrusted server, the prover, can do is that it can prove the data-related computation and then refer to the commitment to show that they are actually doing the computation that is related to the data that the verifier holds. And another one would be committing ahead of time. It means you can commit first and then prove later about the data. This can happen because the first commitment you make is going to enable the multiple arguments that you're going to make in the future. So it's really useful for some stable data, which doesn't really change much, since you can fix the data as a commitment and then use it to prove some various relation in the future. And the other one would be the modular composition of the proof. Say, let's, for example, there's a circuit that includes an algebraic relation and the Boolean relation. What can happen is you can actually use some different proof system efficient for each of them, and then connect the proof systems by guaranteeing that they're using the same input of the shared U by using the commitment of the U. So this could be very flexible. So it could provide more flexible and efficient structure for the various general proof systems. So, okay, let's see how this is going to be applied to the real application examples. First one we could think of would be maybe a federated learning. So let's say in federated learning, there's a central server who actually keeps the machine learning model. And then the individual users are going to train this model by using their own data individually. But in this case, what we want to think about is that there could be some malicious users who want to actually attack this model to distort or break the model. then we do not want this to happen. So we have to let users to share their commitments of the data and then let them prove that they are doing the correct training without any malicious data inside. And also another application we can think of is popular self-sovereign identity. And you can look at it as more like a modern version of the anonymous credentials. What happens here is that there's a citizen, like let's say Alice, for example, is going to upload the personal information to the government, and the government is going to confirm that this personal information is correct. Then it's going to upload the fingerprint, which is a commitment to the shared platform, such as blockchain, for example. Then what can happen later in the future is that, let's say there's a company like Google who wants to make an event for some citizens who live in Los Angeles. Then Alice can actually prove that she lives in LA, but without revealing any other personal information that she has. And the other one would be, of course, our favorite popular application, the blockchain. In the blockchain, there are a lot of situations that we want to prove something in the circuit. And let's say if we are transferring anonymous coin, we can actually do some modular composition by using different proof system for membership and the transferring of the coin, and then use the CommitImprove for the efficient proof composition. So I guess this is everything about the CommitImprove, which was presented since last year. And here we are moving on to the extension now, which is the Encrypted Improve, which is added this year. So now we all know that the CommitImprove is about data being pointed to the commitment. In Encrypted Improve, what's different is the only difference is that this commitment is going to be extended to the encryption, which is a ciphertext. So the definition would be like this: the data is now being pointed to a ciphertext that could be decryptable to a message if somebody has a secret key for the encryption. So what can happen with this in usability is, of course, because the Encrypted Improve is an extension from the CommitImprove, it's going to embrace all the same usability as the CommitImprove, like, for example, compressing or encrypting ahead of time or modular compositions. But also because of the encryption, it can have some additional usabilities, such as, for example, we can support verifiable encryption because the proof system will guarantee that the encryption is done correctly. And also we can actually encrypt the message while proving some arbitrary properties of the message. For example, let's say we're going to encrypt the message and also convince the verifier that the message is within certain range of 10 to 20 or something like that. And the third one would be the privacy differentiation. Because the ciphertext can actually reveal different information that is a whole message or some proof. So there is another party decryptor now compared to the CommitImprove. The decryptor is going to get the whole message by decrypting the ciphertext, while the public, the verifier, which is the same as CommitImprove, can only see the property or the relation holds by checking the proof. So let's see how this can be applied to the examples again. One example would be an e-commerce system. Let's say like company like Amazon or Google wants to sell or rent some digital products by encrypting the data to the customer. In this case, the customer might want to at least check that if the product satisfies some certain properties like valid rental period or legitimate copyrights. So in this case, we can support the verifiable encryption by using the Encrypted Improve framework. And also let's think about something like encrypting ahead of time. Well, we can also make an example of digital contract system. Well, let's say there are some contractors who are going to share their contract by encrypting the contract to each other. And then they're going to upload it initially to some shared platform like blockchain. And then in the future, what can happen is there could be some third party like governments who wants to actually check that if their contract satisfies some certain properties like contract type or date of the contract or some range of the deposit number. So in this case, also Encrypted Improve can make it work. And another interesting example is a voting system. Let's imagine that you are encrypting the votes to the verifier, which is public or the administrator of the voting. Well, what you can do is you can encrypt the votes and also prove that you are a certain member within the group by doing the membership test within the zero-knowledge proof. Then what can happen is that you can actually guarantee the privacy of the vote by secure encryption, and also you can guarantee the voting right of yours by the membership test.
Okay, so can I just ask you a question? Are we mainly talking about asymmetric encryption or symmetric or both?
Oh, we are talking the asymmetric, not symmetric,
okay.
like a public key encryption only.
Okay, thanks.
So I hope everybody agrees now that Encrypted Improve could be quite useful for some applications. So let's see how this can be constructed as a real protocol or working scheme. Well, one existing way is to exploit the commit carrying snark, which can happen by lifting the existing algebraic encryption to work with the snark. This, more precisely, it means that if an encryption can output or contain a commitment, which is a commit carrying encryption, we can actually make the existing algorithm to work like a commit carrying encryption. Then this commit carrying encryption can be plugged into the commit improve as a commitment input. So what happens, like, let's see the diagram here. In the commit carrying encryption, you have a ciphertext that contains the ciphertext and the commitments. And then we can use this commitment of the message to the commitment that works for the commit improve. Then we can automatically gain the framework for the Encrypted Improve. The representative example is the Sabre we presented last year, because in Sabre, the ciphertext already contains the Peterson commitment of the message for the knowledge soundness. So we can just make it work as the commit improve framework. So certainly the commit carrying encryption could be one way to achieve the Encrypted Improve framework, but not in general, of course. So let's summarize what's the difference between CommitImprove and the Encrypted Improve framework. So of course, in CommitImprove, we are using the commitments while we are using the public key encryption, the ciphertext in the Encrypted Improve. So the main difference was that the commitment in CommitImprove reacts to only the verifier by letting them check the proof, while the ciphertext reacts to the verifier and the decryptor who holds the secret key. So it can support the privacy differentiation in a way. So for the use cases, maybe for applications where some fingerprinting or modularity is enough, we can use the commit improve. But if we need something more like privacy differentiation, maybe we want to use the encrypt improve by extending the commit improve scheme. So I guess this is what basically we've been doing since last year. So these are all like defined in the reference document. We made some general commit and encrypt improve syntax in the documents. And we actually made both version in separated and combined version, meaning that we have defined the separate CP snarks and separate EP snarks, and also CP and EP snark that could accept the both input of the commitment and the encrypted ciphertext. So this reference document is of course available at the Usability workshop paper link. And also since last year, our working group has been doing some interactions to make some progress. So if you're interested, you are always welcome to type commit improve in the ZKProof working group, and then you are free to join us and make some more progress together. Okay, so now let's talk about the next step, what we want to do. I mean, what we wanted to discuss for today and for the near future. I think the most important thing now is to agree on some specific constructions, especially for the commit improve, because since last year, commit improve basically already agreed on most of the definitions and syntax. And we also agreed that we are going to standardize some specific 2 or 3 constructions for commitments and the commit improve scheme. So now would be a good time to discuss on this and make some progress on actually choosing the actual standard from the candidates. And we could, of course, do the same thing for the encrypt improve, but I wouldn't say this is really urgent compared to the commit improve since this is a new idea. So maybe we can gather some more ideas like opinions on what candidates can be included in the encryption schemes or encrypt improve schemes. So let's look at the candidates now. So first commitment candidate is here in the list. So the most popular one since last year was a Peterson commitment, of course. But when we talk Peterson, we always have to think about various different types of distributions because there are a lot of types for the Peterson, like for example, standard uniform distribution, or maybe there are some Lagrange polynomials. And also we may also have to define some preliminaries on, for example, what group are we going to work on or what security properties we want to define for the Peterson. And the second candidate were snark-friendly commitments, meaning that there are a lot of ad hoc or scheme-specific commitments in the various specific proof systems. For example, there is a Peterson on the Zcash job curve, which is well known to be working great for the elliptic curve cryptography. And also, I'm not 100% sure, but maybe snark-friendly hashes such as Poseidon or MIMC could be actually included in this category. And there is also some other non-algebraic commitments like collision-resistant hashes such as SHA-256 or Mockle trees, or even some vector commitments in general. So these were the candidates that we were talking about since last year. So maybe we could choose some standard between those candidates. And let's move on to the CommitImprove. For the CommitImprove scheme, we were talking about the Sigma protocol since last year. But if we want to talk Sigma protocols, we also need to agree on some syntax, meaning that, for example, if we want the interactive version or the non-interactive version, or what do we want to do about the random coins, or what do we want to do about the definition of working lemma? And maybe we need to agree on, do we want the common reference string version or not? And the second candidate is the Grossa-High, which is the basic pairing-based proof system. And also we have the popular Gross16 with using the snark-friendly hash for commitments encoded inside. Maybe, and also we have the Lego Gross16 for the candidates, which is from the Lego snark paper that can work as a commit-carrying snark, which can be plugged into the CommitImprove framework. Okay, now these are the candidates for the CommitImprove, and we can always do the same for the encryption candidates. But of course, as I said before, this is not really urgent. Maybe we can just gather some ideas and like enhance some more candidates and choose some standards later for the construction. So first candidate we can propose is the algebraic encryption, of course, but we want to take the exponential version because this one is exactly taking the same format with the Peterson commitment. So it's going to work with the snark. But this may require some bunch of definitions on preliminaries, and also we should notify that this only works for some small domain of the message, because we need to decrypt the message by finding the discrete log with brute forcing the message in the group elements. And also there is a tiny problem of knowledge soundness, I think, because algebraic doesn't really care about the knowledge soundness, but the snark actually cares about it. The second one would be the Saber, which was presented last year. But actually the Saber is basically the same thing as the algebraic, which resolves the tiny problems that I've mentioned right now. Because Saber is already an extended version of the algebraic encryption, which resolves like knowledge soundness or the small domain issue with the snark link color encryption technique. But if we want to standardize this, maybe we want to trim out some unnecessary features, because Saber has some additional features like re-randomization or some verifiable decryption. Maybe practitioners doesn't want these kind of additional features when they're using it as a basic encryption scheme. And of course, we have the snark-friendly encryption like algebraic algorithm or some RSA-based encryption that is from the COCO paper, which is implemented in the libsnark. Now for the Encrypted Improve, I guess this is almost very similar to the CommitImprove, because we are talking the same proof system that only accept the encrypted ciphertext instead of the commitments. So basically, same thing like Sigma protocols or Grossa-High or Gross16, but maybe we have to refine some definitions for the ciphertext instead of the commitments. And also we have the Lego Gross16, but maybe this could be a working construction in current status, because we already have the Saber, so we can just plug it in as a commit-carrying snark to the Lego snark CommitImprove, which can work whole as an Encrypted Improve scheme. I guess now this is all I had to present today. So now let's go on to the discussion. So as I said, the most important thing that we want to decide this year is what are like top 2 items we want to standardize in the next year from the candidates of the commitments and the CommitImprove. So this is discussion 1. And the next one would be for the application. Of course, we all agree that there are some popular applications like voting or anonymous credentials, right? So maybe it could be really helpful for practitioners if we can provide some official recipe or a manual to make these kind of applications. So discussion number 2 is, does it make sense to create recipes to explain usual applications? And the third one is about picking the candidate for the encryption. So what could be the candidate for the construction of the encryption scheme in Encrypted Improve? And also, we might want to talk about, do we want to standardize the commit-carrying encryption, its concept, because commit-carrying encryption itself is one way to achieve the Encrypted Improve. So do we want to standardize its concept or not? And the other one is an extension of the encryption. Maybe if we think more about the encryption, there certainly exists some kind of encryption with more complicated and advanced functionalities, such as like identity-based encryptions or attribute-based encryptions. So in most applications, practitioners may need more than just an encryption and use these kind of advanced encryption for their application. So it might be really helpful if we can actually provide more diverse and finer grained notion of the Encrypted Improve, such as IBE Improve or like ABE Improve in the future. So discussion number 4 is, should we extend the notion to something like that? And the last discussion is more like a general extension, and I think it's not really important in this level, but still, the commitments was extended to the Encrypted Improve this year. So maybe if we become more creative, there could be more other contexts that we can actually extend the commitments. So for example, we already know that there exists something like accumulate and prove for efficient proving of the accumulation. Also, maybe we can think of something like sign and prove, which can work for efficient proving of the signature verification that is inside a proof system. So discussion number 5 is, what extension can we consider for the standard in the future? Okay, so I guess this could be the end of my presentation now. So here I list up the topics, and thank you for all of your attentions. Now it would be a great time to run on the discussion.
Can you leave that slide up, please, just so we can refer to it?
Yeah, sure. I'll just leave it on.
Yeah. Okay, so what ideas do people have?
Oh, I'm sorry. I saw some chats going on, but I didn't really read it. Were there any like midterm questions that I had to answer?
So people referencing papers.
I guess there were some answers on the chat, so maybe I shouldn't really care about this.
No, there was nothing that should be addressed, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move into discussion.
I feel like there are quite a few questions covered in the presentation. Is there one that we want to start with?
Let's just go through the topics in order, shall we? Okay. So the question is, what 2 items do we want to standardize? Would people like to talk about their favorite thing to standardize?
Right, and I think this discussion should also take into account how other standardization efforts are already working in some of these directions. And
that's a very good point.
That would be Sigma protocols, wouldn't it?
Sigma protocols and also friendly primitives, potentially, for the start-friendly option.
And also beyond ZKProof, right? Anything that's relevant, maybe hash to curve, things like this that may be relevant in IETF and so on. I wanted to maybe say something like ask it differently, maybe instead of jumping right away into sort of what commitment scheme should standardize or what is your knowledge system. Maybe we should ask the question, what are the components that need to be actually standardized in order to have like a commit and prove standard, right? What do we want to call a commit and prove standard? Sort of this meta question, because it's true that, you know, the working group has been, you know, working on these kind of extensions and putting things together for about a year. Last year, we had a very interesting discussion. I'll try to bring up the notes in a second and share it so that people have access to those as well. And so we have a very kind of key question as a community here of thinking what is really the next step from, you know, a paper to a standard. Like, how do we want to shape that transition, and what does that standard look like, right? So I want to ask you all, what do you think a commit and prove standard should include, right? If you're a developer and you're looking, you know, to implement this kind of composability in your application, what do you want to see, right? Anyone would like to take a shot at it?
I mean, putting my developer hat on, it would be really useful to have had a standardized encrypt and prove system for sapling or orchard or the Zcash protocols, because we do we encrypt notes to send them to the recipient, but that isn't currently checked in the circuit. And one reason it isn't checked is just efficiency. But we could potentially sort of have stronger security properties, especially for things like selective disclosure, if we if we prove that correct.
So my impression when it comes to encrypt improve type stuff is actually it's like very expensive to do properly, especially if you're talking like algebraic, because then you're talking range proofs in order to check that things are actually within the range such that you can decrypt. And you're also talking one encryption per little bit of range, so you have to sort of split them up, and you lose any properties to do with homomorphism because you might go over the message space and such. It's sort of, it sounds like something that should be really simple, but you very quickly run into a lot of reasons why it's not simple. And I think this is often the reason why people don't use algebraic encryption for this kind of thing. So what would people's opinions be on that?
Sorry, may I add something as well? So I think regarding the IRS comment, I also had an impression that this check on the encrypted node is not performed exactly because of the bad performance that would be there if sapling had some additional type of ZKP proving the correctness. And then in fact, as far as I understand, but please correct me, there are two basically families of encrypted proof here. The first one would be discrete logarithm or saver, which is also discrete logarithm technically. So it's a small, it's like you need to somehow move your message to the exponent, and then you need to solve discrete logarithm to decrypt, or do something like that. So there is like some inefficiency coming from the fact that you cannot pack the messages tightly. And then there is a second family, which is RSA, which is, in my opinion, not a really snark-friendly primitive. So it is used in Cocoa, but I think it's not used in Cocoa as a baseline or as the best solution. So it's used as a something in the middle. It's definitely not efficient.
My impression was also that the RSA was a proof of concept in the code.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that would be yeah.
So I haven't looked at the details of, for example, Saver. How much can you encrypt in a single, let's say, scalar multiplication operation? Presumably just one field element, or is it?
If you're talking the Saber protocol, well, maybe just one block would be suitable for 4 to 8 bits, maybe. But you can just put all of them by concatenating the blocks by making multiple blocks and then decrypting each block to like concatenate the message again.
So,
when you
so then, sorry. So then, as far as I understand, you would have. So what we did when we wanted to show the strong simulation extractability based on Saver is that we didn't need to have like 4 or 6 bits. So you take the small space because you want to solve this logarithm efficiently, right? You need to kind of get it from the exponent of the algorithm. And then what we did is that we took a bigger number, like 30 or something, because we didn't need to really decrypt it. It's just it was like we should have been able to efficiently do that in theory. It's like something different. So then what I remember is that if you want to have a very small message space, is that you need to take multiple kind of blocks. So you need to take a 1 point per this small block. So essentially you spend like 256 bits of the elliptic curve point to encrypt like 6 bits of real information, or is it incorrect?
So
I think there is some overhead, some space overhead. I remember there was.
Could you like summarize again of your question, because I couldn't really understand what you're saying.
So you want to encrypt like 50 bits, and then you need to split them. So you want to do it with algemal. And so as far as I remember, in Saver you have the ciphertext is split into these CI messages, and each message is like just an exponent that kind of a group element that hides the message block in the exponent. And each block is really small. It's like 5, 6, 10 bits because you need to be able to discrete logarithm solve it. So yes, eventually what you have is that you have one elliptic curve point per 5 bits of information, which makes it, which induces certain overhead, I would say.
Yes, of course. Yeah, you're correct.
Is there a reason why you can't do what you would do in ECIES, for example, outside the circuit, and just agree a shared secret and use symmetric encryption for the rest of it, the rest of the message?
I would assume it is possible, yes. So that then you would have like a constant size ciphertext, and then, I mean, that would contain a symmetric key rate.
Right, and you
Yeah,
presumably have to
that improves the
use
situation
authenticated
significantly. Yes. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but still, I want to point out that I'm not sure. So adding to Barry's comments, not sure about what is the real world comparison of efficiency of encrypted proof schemes. Although I think they're quite useful in general in many other applications in theory as well.
So is there anything about the security properties that you need from Encrypted Improve that would cause any obstacle to that hybrid approach?
Maybe something we could think about is the knowledge soundness, as I talked in the presentation, because normally encryption doesn't really care about knowledge soundness when you are linearly encoding the message on the exponent of the group elements. But in the snark, maybe you would like to have the knowledge soundness property. So this could be trickier.
So what do you mean to have knowledge soundness for an encryption scheme? What does this thing mean?
If you are going to use the encryption for the proof system, then it's like it's quite different. If you're going to encode the encryption inside a snark, then it's not a real problem because you're making the encryption as an input of the snark. But if you want to like do the encryption outside of the circuit, like encrypt first and then link it later with the snark system, and then maybe you need some kind of knowledge soundness for the encryption also, so that it can be actually compatible with the knowledge soundness in the snark, because you're going to compare the same message that lies in the encrypted ciphertext and the proof system.
I think maybe the notion would be some kind of non-equivocability of the encryption, right? Like you cannot decrypt easily the same ciphertext in two different ways, which are both good. Like you want yeah, a kind of non-equivocable encryption scheme.
Isn't this like robustness, or maybe I'm mistaken, but it's something wrong? Robustness property by Abdullah.
Is this something like binding property? Because encryption does not really actually care about the binding, so it could be also a trickier notion.
Yeah, in this sense, I mean, you don't want to be able to find two messages which could be valid decryption of the same ciphertext when you
that
give
would
up
be
your
the binding
key,
property.
So is it possible to achieve that generically just by adding a commitment to the plain text and encrypting that as well?
Not sure. But because I was thinking about the secret key scenario, in the secret key scenario, you could you just do one-time pad, and then if you are the one having the secret key, and then you give up your secret key, now your message can be whatever you want. And of course, this is a one-time pad is not a good candidate for encrypt and prove, at least not generically.
And similarly, if your hybrid encryption is using a MAC, then
maybe you want some
sufficient either.
No, because it's really a property that should hold for an adversary that knows the key.
Right.
So
that's why you need a binding property like a commitment. Okay. So we seem to have got immediately onto Encrypted Improve. Should we go back to CommitImprove and try?
Yeah, it looks like it, because we already have the discussion for the Encrypted Improve. Also, maybe we can like do this maybe 10 minutes later again by thinking of some candidates.
Yes. Okay, so we have some. Let's talk about the commitments first. So does this trace of commitments, does it need to be specific to the CommitImprove? Because we want to standardize commitments anyway for the whole standard.
So this would be a good time to gather opinion again, because like last year in the discussion, I remember there were a lot of people who said maybe standardizing like specific constructions, for example, would be a great choice for the standard. But maybe this year, if someone thinks that this is like an overkill, maybe we can go back to just defining the general commitment as a CommitImprove framework. So this could be a good discussion actually.
If we were to go the specific route, then it sort of seems to me that uniform is more standard than Lagrange, for example, when it comes to Peterson commitments. Not that there aren't lots of very good uses for Lagrange polynomials, but the sort of, if I thought Peterson commitment, I would think G to the A, H to the B. That is just what would come to mind.
So we want to standardize that form of Peterson commitment anyway, because some applications need the homomorphic property. So for example, the Hopwood Peterson commitments don't have that property.
So maybe one slightly off-top question: is there any standardization effort which I'm not maybe aware of on the snarky-friendly primitives? It sounds like something that should have been discussed at some point. So commitments, Peterson commitments are very good thing to standardize, I think personally, but it seems to be slightly on the edge of the topic. So it's useful for this topic definitely, but it also would be very valuable for people who just want to have to implement to reason about circuits and to construct circuits.
Yes, so I think the SNARK friendly primitives group was intending to standardize both ordinary and Bo Hopwood Peterson commitments. So that will happen anyway. Let's see. So do we think that non-algebraic hashes like SHA-256, is there interest in using those for commitments, or do people think they're too expensive? I guess an advantage of those is that it's a standard outside the ZKProof space, so you know that it's going to be a stable specification that you can use a long time into the future, probably.
Are there any MPC in the head people here? Because like, I believe that there have been implementations that have been efficient enough for SHA-256 with these sort of more symmetric based primitives where you'll have larger proof sizes, but equally each of your operations is much faster, and there maybe 256 makes more sense.
Yeah, I mean, we worked out how many rows it took to implement SHA-256 in Plonk, and that was about 2,100 rows, if I remember correctly. But that's using custom gates, so that's specific to one proof system. So yeah, it can be practical sometimes. I guess so. A disadvantage of these algebraic commitments is that they're specific to one group. If there's a problem with the group, say some breakthrough in discrete log, or say it's a pairing-based group and there's something specific to that construction that's wrong, then you won't be able to rely on those commitments indefinitely.
I mean, I do sort of see Peterson commitments as being the low-hanging fruit, the easier one to go for. But that doesn't mean that I think that there's no value in SHA-256 commitments, because I mean, they're just is.
Yeah, so I want to express that I think there is also value in having non-algebraic commitments. I think it's mainly the main use I see is if you want to have commitments in state which potentially persists for a long time, and you don't know especially because of post-quantum security, it might be that you want to have something which is not reliant on group assumptions there.
That's a very good point. Although, so things like Poseidon are also not reliant on group assumptions.
Yes, I agree. So I think there's an advantage on that side. I think the additional advantage which you already pointed out of SHA-256 or the like is that they have been much more scrutinized already. So there's a potential of them being held to a higher standard of security than say Poseidon, where hopefully nothing will happen, but who knows what the state of the art of cryptanalysis will be in several years' time.
So it sounds to me like there is interest in standardizing all of these three options, Pedersen commitments, snark-friendly algebraic, commitments based on snark-friendly algebraic hashes, like Rescue and Poseidon, and conventional hashes like SHA-256, Blake2B, etc. Is that a fair summary of the discussion?
Maybe the snark-friendly commitments are more relevant to other discussions, but other than that, I think yes.
I would like to make, sorry there, just want to make a meta point real quick, which is, on the one hand, I like to push this. I agree with everything that was said so far in terms of interest and Thomas' points on the future of cryptanalytic observation we could do on certain hashes. On the one hand, I'd like to strategize, also to propose that we could strategize what we want to standardize as soon as possible, and what we also want to standardize at some point. So I think we should also talk about that, like eventually what do we want to standardize. But if we had to make a choice, given how hard it is to, I think, to converge all of us working on this, it's coming really, what's the word in English, but it's been a little bit of a stillicide, if that's really a real English word. It's been very slow in terms of progress. So I'd like to propose that if we had to standardize nothing else in the next year, what would you pick? Would you pick non-algebraic approaches? Would you pick standard patterns and so on and so forth? And does this make sense as a proposal?
Sorry, maybe one guiding question that I have for myself, I don't know. So if I want to use Pedersen commitments right now, what would I do is that I would probably go to Zcash spec, right? And then I would read that and I would try to find some academic papers, but is there any really kind of specific, is there any good specification for Pedersen commitments that is independent of that, really? So do I really need to read like implementation? So is there at least one good way kind of to do this? Because my impression was last time I did it was that it was not the case. So I was just gleaning information from different people. Although it seems like a very standard primitive in many, at least theoretical works that you know.
So assuming that you have a prime ordered group, the specification of and you also need a way of hashing into the group, because you need to be able to choose independent generators that verifiably no one knows the discrete logs of.
Yeah.
So if you can do that, so we presumably will want to reference the hashing to elliptic curves internet draft. Then the specification of an ordinary Pedersen hash is pretty clear.
I also remember there was some. Okay, it's not. Yeah. So it's mostly about hashing into the curve. Yes, I think. Right. Okay.
Yeah, and most papers that use Pedersen hashes tend to hand wave away that part. They assume that there's some parameter generator that does that. but I think we would have to specify.
It for me seems more like a, more theoretically important to kind of have the, to have not literally theoretically important only, but to have more of a both sides. So the last time I used it, I wanted to have like something that really works in reality and then have clear theoretical understanding of how it works. And I usually found one of the two. Yeah, okay. So the answer to my question is probably no, and this is why this standardization would help. Yeah. Cool.
I suggested standardizing all three of these things, an algebraic snap-friendly hash, pairs and commitments, and how to use a conventional hash function as a commitment. And there's not entirely obvious because there's several ways of doing it. So is there agreement or disagreement on that approach?
Maybe
I think that's fine.
Do people think that it's too much work,
or even a poll? Can we do a poll?
I'm not sure how to do polls. I'm not sure that I have the necessary permissions. Daniel, can you set up a poll?
Let me set up a poll. So we have 3 options. That's the.
Yeah, can we do approval voting? Or
A what, sorry?
can we do approval voting? You vote yes or no on each of the 3 options, or is that it?
Sure.
Okay.
So what's the first one? Can you just guide me for a second? It's
pairs and commitments.
The second one is
snap-friendly algebraic hash commitments. So given some snap-friendly algebraic hash, how to use that as a commitment.
So snark-friendly algebraic hash commitments, that's what you said?
Yes.
And the third one is?
Conventional hash function commitments.
So how to instantiate it as a commitment?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. You have 3 questions. I'm launching the poll. Please take some time to answer. I'm going to give a minute at least. So if you haven't voted, please go vote. You should see a pop-up window from the Zoom app, or if not, maybe you have a button at the bottom that says polling or polls.
So there was a question, maybe a poll for Poseidon, but that was the second option in the poll, but it didn't specifically say Poseidon. And I think it probably shouldn't. I think it's up to the working group to decide which of those things they want to standardize.
We only have 56% of people voted. So if a few more of you want to, I'll say one more thing. There is, of course, the wish and the wish of for people to see these things standardized, but then there is also the actual work that needs to be done, right? As Matteo was saying, some people will have to take some ownership here to actually write these specifications. I'm sure the authors will probably take some of this, but it's not clear that the responsibility should fall back on them when the community chooses, right? It's this trade-off that we need to keep in mind. So I'm going to end the poll in 5 seconds.
This is kind of gauging interest.
Yeah. Okay, so here are the results. I guess Pedersen commitments is yes, blindfolded. Snark-friendly primitives, well, it seems like there is interest, like algebraic hash commitments. I don't know if that 40 or the other 45% is sort of enough to drop it off the sort of the book for the next year. But it does seem like it would be interesting to sort of have conventional hash functions instantiated as commitments.
Yeah, it seems like there's a good consensus that we should standardize Pedersen commitments and conventional hash functions first, and then algebraic hashes if there's enough effort and interest and time. Okay, so that was a useful poll.
Yeah, thank you for proposing it. There is a question by Matteo, I think. Can we do a poll on what we should standardize first?
I think that's relatively clear from those results, to be honest.
Yeah, same here. I think Pedersen commitment should be first in any case. And maybe there is a question that is sort of a level lower, is what kind of Pedersen commitment, right?
Yeah. I mean, I guess so Zcash uses both, because in some cases we need homomorphism property, and in others we don't. We just need efficiency. So that's that.
Okay. So thanks for everybody who answered the poll. That was great. We actually have about 7 more minutes for this discussion.
Okay, so I guess we should go on to what protocols we want to try and standardize. So who has opinions about that? Was there another working group that was looking at Sigma protocols?
Yeah, we set it up this year. So I think Michele is here, and maybe not, but Michele and Stefan are leading that.
Yeah, I'm here, but I'm not sure if there was a specific question for me.
Maybe just wondering, how do you see sort of the working group for Sigma protocols interact with, like be standardized as an application, like used in application for CommitImprove, for example?
I don't know. Honestly, I really think it's a bit too early. I think we should just make sure that there is a space to discuss it like next year. But for now, I'm really not ready to, like, I really have no clear idea on whether they should integrate together. They should be part of the same thing or not. I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry, Michele.
No, that's a good answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if they aren't ready to standardize, then I guess we don't want 2 working groups stepping on each other's toes. It's more efficient to kind of directly.
What we could do, sorry to interrupt, what we could do is to have potentially a shared call in 2 or 3 months' time, where we bring both working groups and we try to see if there is any synergies that could get out of that, right? That could be interesting.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe just before the summer.
Okay, so I'm definitely putting this as both of the authors of the proposals to keep in mind, so we can do that. What about Groth Sahai? Is that something that people are using today at all, or is there any like important advantage of using Groth Sahai proofs in CommitImprove?
I guess this is from the HackMD notes that was appeared in the last year. So I wouldn't say this is the main candidate actually, because maybe somebody has just proposed it, but it wouldn't be really important as we think. So maybe we can just cross it out, or maybe if somebody has an opinion.
So let's consider Groth 16 and Lego Groth 16. I mean, obviously, Grot16 has the advantage of compatibility with a lot of existing deployed systems. Lego Grot16 has these additional features for sort of plugging together proof systems efficiently. Are the differences between them large enough that you would need separate implementations, or is it likely that a single implementation could support both?
Between Grot-Sahai and Grot16?
No, between Grot16 and Lego Grot16.
Oh.
Because my impression was that Lego Grot16, the extensions were pretty modest and easy to implement. Is that a correct impression?
There, could you repeat that? Your impression was?
My impression was that the extensions that get you to Lego Grot16 from Grot16 were fairly modest and easy to implement.
Yeah, I think there are ways, off the top of my head, there are ways to, one implementation with small tweaks should handle them both, yeah.
So should we go for that one as a starting point?
Where that one is both? Or, so I think that was Dara's point, right? Maybe.
Yeah, so I mean, we want to standardize Grot16. I think pretty much everyone has agreed we want to standardize Grot16, or should we have a poll about that?
I think we're, yeah.
Does anyone have any dissent to standardizing Grot16? I mean, I'll play devil's advocate. It has a trusted setup, and that makes it really difficult to fix security flaws in a timely fashion, because you have to do a new setup. So that's one reason not to use Grot16, but I'm not sure that's a reason not to standardize Grot16.
But
yeah,
what do you mean by standardizing it in the context of CommitImprove? Standardize the way you use Grot16 to do CommitImprove, or just the Grot16 algorithm itself?
So what I was saying just now is that we definitely want to standardize the Grot16 algorithm itself. But given that we do that, and if we do CommitImprove at all, then we should probably standardize how to use Grot16 specifically to do CommitImprove. Is the consensus on that?
Yep, I think so. If there's anybody who doesn't agree to that, please say so. You have about 20 seconds before we wrap up and move on to the next session.
Just want to ask, in that case, I mean, the compatibility between Grot16 and commit friendliness is basically the groups it's working on, right? The pairing-based group it's working on. I cannot think of any other features.
Yeah, I would imagine so. So for example, suppose you're using Grot16 on BLS 12381, you presumably want to do your commitments on JobJob.
Yeah. So it will require standardizing these specific points as a concept.
Yeah,
and I would agree. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you for sure. Thanks to Jiwon for presenting and all the authors, and Dara for moderating. This was a great discussion. I'm happy to see that this kind of second round of discussions did get us a little bit closer to what could that look like. We will be sharing the Telegram group of the working group in the link to the Telegram group of the working group in the main channel, and we'll send it out also through email and whatnot so that you can all join. Definitely we'll be setting up some follow-up call before next year, right? Like this is, I think, the next step in this process for us. So again, thank you. I'm going to